Nimrod, Nebrod, God Bok, the great military leader Nino Belov. On eve of departure for conquest of Asia, a young emperor, Alexander III Karanovich, in Greek Karanides, proclaimed the Great, held a preparatory meeting of military, civil and religious leaders in Pella in early spring 334 BC. At that gathering, Alexander presented the reasons for a military campaign in Persia, his intentions and commitments regarding the conquest of Asia. Then Persian Empire stretched from the Indus River to the Dardanelles and Libya, and from Aral Sea to Yemen. Alexander stated that he would follow the path and examples of god Bok, who had previously gone on a conquest campaign in Asia. He added that he considered himself Bok's successor. Among the old Serbs, the god Bok was considered the greatest among the gods, above whom was only the supreme and invisible god. Bulls were sacrificed to god Bok, and he was personified in the form of a bull. The Serbs called it Bok, the Romans pronounced this as Bacchus, and Greeks as Bacchos. Mother Bok. Bok's mother is a goddess who personified the earth and was literally called Earth, Zemlya. However, Greeks gave this god their own name, Dionysius, which is a combination of two names, Dios, which means God, and Nisa, the place of Bok's birth, old name for Nish. There were several old cities called Nisa in Europe, Asia, and Africa, wherever the belief is in the god Bok was present, or wherever Serbs were present. In ancient times, emperors, kings, and even great heroes associated their origins with some of the gods, and this was a common occurrence. It usually happened that a famous person was proclaimed the son of one of the gods, whether that genealogy originated from that person himself or from the environment that surrounded him. When someone proclaims himself the son of God in this way, then he acts as a representative of God, his father, or simply identifies with his father. That is, he appears in tradition as God himself. This rule was especially true for great personalities who achieved extraordinary success in their lives. Roman emperors, almost all of them, tried to present themselves as deities, mostly without success. From Alexander's statements, we learn that some great military leader, long before him, took action a campaign from the Helm, Balkan Peninsula, that is, from Serbia, as it will turn out in fact, to the east all the way to India. That military leader remained in the people's memory as God Bok, whose successor Alexander pretends to be and wants to follow his example. It now remains for us to find out who that great ancestor was when the people, astonished by its successes, proclaimed him to be God Bok. Our work has been doubled because Alexander tells us and points to it during the whole time of his campaign, and the fact confirmed that there was another great campaign after Bok's from Serbia to India. This second campaign was led again according to folklore by another god, because it is believed that such feat could only be accomplished by a god and not an ordinary person. That other great hero is called Serbon in Serbian. The Greeks call him Heracles and Romans call him Hercules. Alexander, like his two predecessors, was proclaimed first the son of God and then as God. Plutarch says that is quite certain, which means that that his contemporaries believed in it, that Alexander is descended from Heracles through his ancestor and ancestor of his dynasty Karan, and from the hero Achilles through his mother Olympia, born Aeacids, Greek Aeacides. Alexander considered himself a rival and follower of Bok, eager to rise to the same level as an educator and master of the world. A very early legend about Alexander was created which tells that he introduced himself as New Buck. Hindus, which he had worked, were actually those who were talking to him about the earlier conquests of Buck and Hercule. I would like to refer here to the name Alexander, which is not clear to many, neither what it means nor how it came to be. Gundulic understood the name best when he sings about Lesandar Srbljanin among the old Serbs, especially in Macedonia. The names ended in dar, which means exactly the same thing as it means today, that is, a gift. A gift, and les is forest or a mountain. Lesandar is the gift of forest. Prefix a was added by Greeks, not in relation to Lysander the Great, but in relation to his famous predecessor, Lysander Priam of Paris. In both cases, the basic name is Lysander. Among the old Serbs, there were various deities, including the deities of some rivers and mountains. It would be the deity Les, not the ordinary mountain. Poljan writes the following about Buck. During his trip to India, in order to enter the cities more easily, Buck concealed the weapons of his army, adorning them with flowers and greenery. The soldiers dressed in light deerskin and linen clothing. They made their spears with ivy so that they looked like ritual turtles. Instead of trumpets, they used bells and drums, and Hindus, seeing them like this in celebration and drunkenness, did not perceive them as enemies, and they easily led them into their cities. Everything that is called orgies today is nothing but means used by Buck during his conquest of Asia and India. In order to wrest his army from hot air in the countries he passed through, he led it to a three-headed mountain whose three peaks were called Korasbia, Kanfask, and Mera. At this last peak, he rested and strengthened his army. He conquered the Hindus and made of them his auxiliary units for conquest of the Bactrians. In the mythology of the Indian Aryans and ancient Slavs, it is believed that Svarog's paradise is located on Mount Mary. Lucian wrote about it in even more detail. To this we can add the custom of old Serbs in their homeland to celebrate Buck's triumph every third year as a sign of his victorious return from India. There were always those who opposed the very idea of existence of those campaigns from Serbia to India. Droysen says the following about Alexander the Great. His Macedonians tell special stories about past times. These stories, which few believed in at that time, were mostly ridiculed, but they were known to everyone and were as if revived by this march. The Greeks were also reluctant to talk about these two expeditions to Asia before Alexander the Great. Some of their writers even denied those campaigns, and led by Eratosthenes claimed that Macedonians invented it all. None of the serious historians doubted that, and the Bible, as we shall see, confirms this. Alexander, first conqueror of Asia Minor, Syria, Palestine, and Egypt. In northwestern Egypt, in the oasis of Siuhi, there was a temple and a famous prophecy of a supreme god Hammon-Ra, which was also visited by people from distant lands. An inscription from the time of Persian Emperor Darius II in honor of god Hammon says, "The gods are in your hands, and the people at your feet. Your heaven, your immortality. People glorify you as one who does not hesitate to take care of them. Their works are dedicated to you." The Greeks called the Egyptian god Zeus Helios. Alexander the Great visited the temple of god Hammon. At the very entrance, before he reached the great prophetess, a young emperor was greeted by a high priest of the temple and greeted in the name of god Hammon with words, "Hello, my son." This meant that the god Hammon-Ra officially proclaimed Alexander the Great his son. Since then, the Egyptians and Asian people have considered Alexander to be the son of God and simply a god. All the defeated people of the empire, including the Greeks, they had to pay tribute to Alexander as a deity, but all but Serbs. In Athens, they dedicated a temple to god Alexander, which caused outrage among some Greeks, led by Demosthenes, who said, "The whole Athens will think of that deity."